So we've seen that we can execute code from a script and see the results in the console by pressing Ctrl Enter on the PC or Command Enter on the Mac. But what if these results are very important to me and I want to save them for later use? Well, in a case like that, variables are very helpful. So a variable is a storage unit in which you can save any sort of value in R. In order to create a variable, the first thing you do is to think of a name, and your name should actually be kind of logical depending on what you want to store in the variable. So let me just come up with a very easy name. This is a sum, so let me just create a variable called my sum, my underscore sum. So that's the name of my variable, which is going to store 12 in this case. But in order to tell R to store 12 in my sum, I need to add the assignment operator. And the popular assignment operator in R is less than and then dash, like this. So this looks like a left arrow. Let me now execute this line of code. When I do, you can see that it shows up in the console, but something new just happened. The variable just appeared in my environment. So the environment is not empty anymore. You have my sum and then its content, 12. We can do it for the other arithmetic operations. So this is going to be my product. Okay, and you can give it whatever name you can think of. For this, I'm going to call it my diff for difference. And this is my fraction. Okay, so notice that even though I rewrote these 3 lines of code, I haven't executed them yet, and that's why they don't show up in my environment. So let me just execute my product, my diff, my fraction, and now all these values are stored. So how do I now access the values that I stored in these 4 variables? Well, I just need to execute the variable names. So my sum, if I execute it, 12. And I can actually perform some operations. My sum times 2. If I execute, that's 24. Okay, and I can actually perform operations with the variables themselves. So my diff times my fraction. Okay, that's 93.6. So variables are very useful in order to store your results that you want to use later in your code or in your project. Now let us quickly talk about comments. Well, you've realized that any text that you write in your script, if you try to execute it, R is going to try to interpret it. So for the gibberish that I just wrote, you can see that R throws an error and tells you, hey, I don't know what this is. But you see, it is very important for you to be able to write text that is going to speak to yourself, text that is going to add some context to what you're doing. And this is what we call comments in coding. And a comment in R is preceded by a pound symbol. So for the first line of 4 lines of code, we can write a comment arithmetic operations, like this. Okay, so let me try to execute this line of code, and let me clear out the console. Okay, if I try to execute arithmetic operations, of course it's going to show up in the console, but nothing will happen. And what R will try to do is to actually try to execute the next line of code, because R simply ignores a comment. But it is important to you, the coder, because when you get back to your code in 2 days, in 3 days, in a month, in a year, you will remember that you were trying to perform some arithmetic operations here. Okay, you can add another comment here, and this comment can be operations with variables. Okay, and this is again providing some context to your code. So I highly encourage you to use as many comments as possible in your work.